Good morning and hello to all of the participants who are joining us for this morning's webinar. It's exactly 11 a.m. Central African time here in Durban, South Africa. We have a lovely, warm winter's day in South Africa. A very warm welcome to all of you. My name is Ahmed Shaikh. I'm the Managing Director of Regent Business School based in South Africa, headquartered in the city of Durban. I want to welcome all of you to this live webinar. This is the second in our monthly series of webinars on entrepreneurship that started last month and will probably end in December 2020. And this is coming out of our Enterprise Development Hub at Regent Business School called Red Hub, Regent Enterprise Development Hub. Ladies and gentlemen, I must also welcome a co-panelist who is joining me for this morning's discussion, Mr. Kevin Viret. Kevin is based in Cape Town, South Africa. Fortunately, thank God, he's got good weather there, I think. So let me say hello and welcome to Kevin as well.
Thank you, Ahmed, and good morning to everyone.
Thank you for joining us, Kevin. Colleagues, ladies and gentlemen, and friends, Kevin Viret is the Vice President of a global satellite company called Yahsat, which originally is from the United Arab Emirates. And I'll say a little more about Kevin, and he'll get to talk about his work and his experience, his extensive experience in Africa in a little while. Ladies and gentlemen, this morning's webinar is a little different from others you may be attending. Whilst we'll spend about an hour together, this morning we're going to do something slightly different. Besides talking to you and sharing our thoughts between Kevin and I, we're also going to do a little demo for you. And I'm going to move over to the team behind me who's going to prototype a product in our makerspace here at Regent in our iLeague lab. And from the time we get started, which is in a minute or so with our webinar, and when we finish about 55 minutes later, they're going to start and have a complete product for us. And we thought that this would be interesting to sort of give you a sense of how technology could help with entrepreneurship and rapid prototyping. So maybe I'll just have an introductory word with the team who's going to be doing our demo this morning. And I think you'll find this very interesting. Morning, colleagues and friends, ladies and gentlemen. Vuyani, I know you're leading the project this morning. So can you tell me in a couple of seconds, I see you've got a blank slate here, lots of drawing pens. What are you up to this morning?
Morning all, morning Dr. Sheikh. Greetings, my name is Vuyani Mbomiseni Dlamini. I'm a final year student here at Regent Business School, majoring in project management and economics. We decided, seeing that people having more time on their hands during this time of COVID-19 with limited internet access, we decided to come up with a low-cost material chess set.
So you're making a low-cost material, so something that's cheap, and it's going to be a chess set.
Absolutely.
Right.
We want to keep idle minds active.
Excellent.
So that people can be proactive towards this situation.
So it's going to help them keep their brain active, good mental health, and they'll be thinking. So there's a bit of critical thinking. And so you're going to make a chess set. You're going to start now. You don't have anything except some pens and some board. And you're going to have a finished chess set when we're finished.
I promise. Me and my team.
That's fantastic. I like that spirit. Tell me who's helping you this morning.
Here with my project team, I have here on my left, Alana. She and Yusuf are part of the design. And my technical guys here, Caesar and Richard, we're gonna be collaborating, as we know that collaboration is key to finding solutions to problems in these turbulent times of COVID-19.
That sounds great. So I'm happy to see you guys starting to draw, and I want to see the chess set. So for now, to the team, checkmate, and we'll see you in a bit. Ladies and gentlemen, that's our plan for this morning's webinar. I want to welcome all of you again and thank you for joining us. I know we have just over a few hundred participants who registered. I see there's 120 odd that are live at the moment. You're joining us from different parts of Africa. I saw some registrations from Central Africa, East Africa, West Africa. So good morning, good afternoon to everybody. I saw quite a few from the United States, North Africa. I saw some from the UK and some from the UAE. So I want to welcome all of you to a warm South African welcome, and let's get started. So what we're going to do is I'm going to go through a few slides with you, ladies and gentlemen, this morning. That's really quite a basic sort of introduction to 4IR, the terms widely used, and I want to demystify it a little bit this morning and not make it as esoteric as people think 4IR is. So I'm going to run through some slides with you very quickly. So maybe you need to do a bit of speed reading. And once I've finished, we'll check in on our design team here, and then I'll get Kevin involved to share his thoughts and ideas. We'll go back to the design team, and we're going to then take some questions and comments from you. So I want to encourage you to use the Q&A function on Zoom if you want to post comments or questions. We've got a few moderators who are going to be assisting with responding to your Q&A. And right at the end, when we've got a few minutes left, just before we see the final product, we'll take some live questions. So ladies and gentlemen, let me get started with the few thoughts that I have with you this morning. Just going to get to my presentation. Right. So this is our theme for today, the positive impact of 4IR, or the fourth industrial revolution, on small, medium, and micro enterprises and startups. And that's basically been our focus for these monthly seminar series on entrepreneurship. And Kevin and I will share a few thoughts with you. So ladies and gentlemen, these are three things we want to cover this morning very quickly. We'll try and unpack disruptive and exponential technologies. We'll look at how they're impacting business. You'll get a practical idea of how it can impact business, you know, with the team, with the demo team behind me. And we'll close with some of the things we're doing at Regent Business School to assist businesses and enterprises or startups or pre-startups embrace 4IR technology. Let me start with a story that I think oftentimes is a good way to try and demystify and unpack all the technical language that we tend to use in 4IR. So here you see, ladies and gentlemen, on your screen, a picture of a pair of conjoined twins. These two boys were born in the United States, in New York, in 2016. So this picture was taken about a year later in 2017. And as many of you, or all of you would know, this kind of conjoined twins are quite rare because they're not just joined at the skull or the cranium. These particular conjoined twins, they also share 5 centimeters, about 2 inches of brain tissue. That's extremely rare and very complex. And the challenge for the surgeons to separate these twins is quite complex. Oftentimes it's quoted that these kinds of twins have roughly a 1% chance of both twins surviving. I must just stop quickly and mention to you, the surgeon, the chief neurosurgeon who conducted this particular surgery, it's quite interesting and sad actually, passed away a few months ago in the US because of COVID-19. And that just highlights how serious the pandemic is. So it's quite interesting that we're talking about a surgery done by a neurosurgeon, an outstanding neurosurgeon from the US who passed away of COVID-19 a few months ago. So to get back to the conjoined twins, what the neurosurgeon and his team had done is quite unique and probably done for the first time in humanity. Before they approached the surgery of separating these two boys, they contacted, remember they're in New York, they contacted a 3D printing company in California, which is now on the west coast of the US, and they asked this 3D printing company, they said, look, can you model the heads of these two boys for us using your technology and using material science? And if any of you on the call are engineers, you'll understand the impact of all of these things. So the 3D printing company sort of simulated through radiological, copies of X-rays, MRI scans, and other interventions, and sent all of these pictures, images, etc., to the 3D printing company in California. And what the Californian company had done, and here I've taken a screen grab from a CNN story on the two boys, and you'll see the presenter, it's got one of the models with him. This is model the two boys with the actual features, and the material for this particular 3D printed model simulated skull bone. So material science is really important in the fourth industrial revolution. But what the surgeons wanted was not just this kind of 3D model, they also wanted to model human tissue and the kind of material that blood vessels are made up of, so they could further simulate what the surgery could be like. And so what the 3D printing company had done was come up with a whole series of models, again, using material science, putting up material with their 3D models and in their 3D printers that actually simulates human tissue, blood vessels, meningioma, and some of you may know the anatomy. And there's a very interesting set of 3D models that this Californian company had sent to the surgeons in New York. The operation started on a Thursday in 2017. It lasted 27 hours. It finished on a Friday evening. And during the surgery, during the 2 days, the surgeons in New York had the 3D printing company in real time in the theater available. Should the surgeons have come across something they didn't really anticipate, they would take some x-rays or scans and send that in real time to the 3D printing company. The 3D printing company would send back a file to the theater. There was a 3D printer in the theater, and they would generate the 3D model, play with the model, and go back to the surgery. It's like doing the surgery before the surgery, right? And of course, here's the result. So the picture on the left, ladies and gentlemen, of the two boys, thank God, smiling after the surgery, and the picture on the right, for the first time, they can see each other and lie down next to each other in a crib, and that was a few months after the surgery. Now, this is quite, for me, quite an interesting story, because if you look at my next slide, merging of the physical, digital, and biological worlds on new platforms as one definition of the fourth industrial revolution, it just sounds like a bunch of words, very technical. But ladies and gentlemen, if you cast your mind back to the conjoined twins, you'll see that there's the real example of how the physical world, the digital world, and the biological worlds now on one platform. The surgeons, the babies, all the equipment, the 3D printing company, the printer, the models, all coming together now in one new merged platform that we can call the fourth industrial revolution. I think this is an interesting way for sort of me to unpack just the title of 4IR for you. But there's a number of technologies, ladies and gentlemen, that are driving the fourth industrial revolution. And we oftentimes call them disruptive and exponential technologies. And we'll try and unpack what those words mean in the next couple of slides. So here's quite a busy slide. It's a study by McKinsey, and you can look that up, but it shows you 12 disruptive technologies. But what's more interesting, let me give you some examples of these 12 disruptive technologies. So here's a short video.
And this is what you would be seeing.
This is what I would be seeing.
Okay.
If you had to give me additional information, if I need to do my checks, I would see it going through the glass. I can call it up. So it just makes it more personalised for the passenger, and also it gives me the additional information that they need, if they do need it. So the time from the car arriving to the passenger going through to the town should not take more than 2 minutes.
So maybe we'll just stop the video there because of time constraints this morning. But basically, ladies and gentlemen, this person works for Virgin Atlantic. This is an experiment that they had done with a little piece of very nifty equipment called Google Glass. I'm sure many of you are familiar with it. It's been in the market for about 7 or 8 years, somewhere around 2012, 2013. Basically, it's a little computer, like a microcomputer in the shape of a pair of glasses, right? So it's a heads-on, optical heads-on display unit. So it's quite interesting technology. They've taken the capacity of a computer, and they've plugged it on the side of a pair of what looks like glasses. So this is a service agent, this gentleman, Ken, works for Virgin Atlantic, and they're testing this for business class passengers at London Heathrow Airport. And the whole challenge of getting a business class passenger out of the aircraft into a VIP vehicle, into the business class lounge, which is normally a long process, as many of you may be familiar, they're saying they can do this in under 2 minutes simply because Ken has in his Google Glass all of the critical information, including facial recognition technology. So without having met a passenger, he's able to say, oh, hello, Professor. Welcome. I see you've traveled from Durban to London Heathrow. You've got a layover here for 6 hours and you're moving on to the UAE to go and visit Yahsat, for example. And he gets all the critical information on his Google Glass and is able to see the passenger. There is fantastic technology. But Google Glass has had many iterations since 2013, and it's been used extensively in many other industries, right? For example, in surgery, there's an interesting example of a surgeon who's had a Google Glass put on at the time of the surgery in one state in the US, and he had a group of students, medical students in another state in the US, thousands of kilometers away, who were following the surgery live as the surgeon had the Google Glass on. It has been used for radiological interventions in surgery. It's been used in education, for example. And here's a picture of a Google Glass with a student who's got a video on it, who can record the lecture, who can click on the hyperlink, who can do an audio tape of the lecture. It's been used in a whole host of industries. This is really disruptive technology, right? So let's move on quickly to the second one, right? These are driverless vehicles or autonomous vehicles as they call. There's no drivers, it's got all the technology, it's artificially intelligent. And as we speak, ladies and gentlemen, now in the month of July 2020, these driverless vehicles in their experiments have driven in excess of 500 million kilometers in different parts of the world, right? And there have been no accidents. Well, okay, so there's been 2 accidents. Both of those accidents were caused by cars with drivers in them. But driverless vehicles, very radical technology, and I think it will become quite commonplace in the near future. Here's an infographic from the World Economic Forum, an artist impression of robotic surgery being done on a lady in some rural area in, say, Africa, for example, right? And this may seem like science fiction, but it's not. It's, as you may know, remote surgery has already happened for many years now. A surgeon in the city of Durban, my city, could put on a pair of artificially intelligent gloves, if you like, and manipulate surgical equipment or machinery in another continent, country, or place, right? So that's already been happening for a number of years. But here, they're putting together a whole range of technologies, AI, they're putting together robotics, and all of the other kinds of technologies, exponential and disruptive, that is able to get what looks like a Mars rover's vehicle on the legs, but an artificially intelligent robot that is able to do remote surgery or provide some medical help to a person in, as you can see, a relatively inaccessible area, inaccessible for healthcare. So here's a little video. So what you can see in the video is a robotic dog made by a company that's called Boston Dynamics. Let me just see if your screen is clear. I've got an idle timer expired. So let me just see if we can get that video going quickly. So it's a robotic dog made by a company called Boston Dynamics. It's got robotics, AI, and other technologies in it, and I'm going to play the full video, but you'll get a sense of what this kind of technology, disruptive technology, is able to think about its uses in security, in other industries, in manufacturing, right? So robots don't have to be these kinds of old-looking, clunky material kind of things that don't really move with agility. Lots of applications even in a household setting. So let me stop it there. So what you're seeing there is really interesting dynamic technology that is fourth industrial revolution related. Here's another picture of an artist's impression of somebody in Southeast Asia, let's call it, who's fixing a little blockchain tower sitting on an island in Southeast Asia. This is a blockchain engineer who's able to bring banking. And if any of you are in the financial services industry, I know that you know this very well, the disruption with e-banks and lots of new competitors, very agile, using technology and taking away market share from traditional banks. They don't need large branches, lots of staff, etc. This is really interesting. Again, exponential, but disruptive technology. And of course, we know blockchain, not just from Bitcoin, but many other applications that is bringing the unbanked and giving them sort of an economic identity. Here's another image, and we're going to stop in a few minutes once I sort of give you a few more examples. This is a 3D printer. Okay, it's a humongosaurus 3D printer. It's 3D printing a tower. It could be in Dubai, using pre-stressed concrete in a gargantuan 3D printer. We do this in a micro scale in our lab, and you'll see us 3D printing something in a couple of minutes. We'll show you a product before we close this webinar in the next half an hour or so. But here's an example, again, what looks like science fiction, but the technology is moving so fast and so rapidly that, of course, we know that a 3D printed house has been done many times over. A normal 2-bedroom kind of home, maybe 80 to 100 square meters. And we use pre-stressed concrete, and 3D printer starts and finishes it within 24 hours, about 24 hours. So that's already been done. So why can't a skyscraper be done with a 3D printer? This is quite an interesting example I'm going to show you of exponential technologies in the context of 4IR. The lady you see on the picture is called Mary Lou. And Mary Lou is part of a company called Open Water. And she's out to build medical imaging technologies with high resolution and low cost to enable universal access to medical diagnoses and treatments for the body and for the brain. In fact, as you can see from my slide, she says that she'll slash the need for physical hospitals within a decade of her product. Now, this is a skull cap that you see on the right-hand side. And Mary Lou says that this skull cap is able to scan the brain 1 billion times, yes, 1 billion times better than an X-ray machine. It's wearable technology, as we call it. There are many other examples like Google Glass we saw earlier, wearable technology, right? And Mary Lou believes that you're able to scan your brain and you're going to get it better than any MRI machine. Any of you have been to an MRI machine, people call it a metal coffin. It's big, and you need a whole room-sized machine. It makes a loud sound. People get claustrophobic in it, etc. This is looks like a shower cap, really. And you put it on your head, and it's able to scan your brain. And she says the resolution and the imagery will be better, 1 billion times better than an X-ray machine. Great imagery, right? And that can be used for medical purposes. I oftentimes caution my male friends and colleagues that this is a dangerous piece of equipment for you. If your wife asks you, you know, look, am I looking fat? And if you've got a skull cap on, I suggest you take it off before you answer the question, because Mary Lou believes it would be able to read your thoughts as well in a little while. So very interesting technology. Here's a quick example, ladies and gentlemen, as I begin to wind down my first part of my presentation, where students, aeronautical engineers, are being trained in a little room. They don't have to go to a physical hangar with a full-size jumbo jet. They're able to put on their VR glasses, and they're able to look at every little nut and bolt of a jumbo jet or a passenger airliner, and they're able to do it in a little room, right? So this is virtual reality. Of course, you get mixed reality, augmented reality. And again, there are many applications for this kind of technologies being widely used, as you see in this slide, in education. You can simulate an interesting sort of experience for students using this kind of technology. And this is the start of what we call smart machines interacting with humans. So human-machine collaboration, as we call it. And one quick example is an exoskeleton. And this used to be used just for people who are paraplegic, have had an accident, have lost the use of their limbs and muscles. And what an exoskeleton does is gives you, as the name suggests, an external skeleton, right? It allows paraplegic people to possibly walk, people who have had a stroke, etc., to get up and to have some kind of physical movement, right? But it's not limited, as you see in this picture, to paraplegics. Exoskeletons are now being used widely in industry. Just imagine a construction worker who's going to lift up a beam. The beam could weigh 100 kilograms, right? And you've got 3 to 4 people who are going to carry this. But now you've got a construction worker with an exoskeleton on who's able to lift up this piece of metal equipment and move it. So it's being used in construction, it's being used in firefighting, and a whole host of other industries. So again, rapid technology, it's moving very fast, and it's going to disrupt many industries. That's a reality. So ladies and gentlemen, that's the first segment, if you like, of our webinar for this morning. I'm going to take a quick break from talking and move to our demo team, and we'll get a sense of whether they've moved beyond some. I see some scribbling, so if we could just sort of get the pan in on what the little design looks like there, and then we'll quickly get to look at what they're busy with. And in a 30 to 45 seconds, I'm going to come back and introduce Kevin to you, and I'm going to ask Kevin to share his thoughts. So ladies and gentlemen, join me as we look at what our demo team is busy with, and forgive the movement, but we're going to quickly move over to have a few seconds of a peek at design. This is the start of the process of design thinking. It starts with an idea, we get to sketch it in our lab, and you get to be creative, and we get to make our mistakes on paper. As the carpenter's principle says, measure twice and cut once. This is our first measurement of whether our design's going to work, right? Really, tell me, you've had now about 15, 20 minutes or so. Well, tell me in a few seconds, what's your design?
Well, our design is a chess set, basically.
Right.
We're gonna create it to be with to go with the times that we are in.
Right.
COVID-19. Basically, it's got a shield. Our logo is
right.
It's got a shield.
So you're protecting yourself.
Protecting ourselves.
Right.
That even though the people are playing,
yeah,
they must be conscious of the fact that they need to protect themselves.
Excellent. I like that. It's got a shield. I see you got some. So you're making it look like a puzzle.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah.
From the design.
Just so it can fit nicely into a small box, so it doesn't have to be a full size. We decided to make it 20 by 20 centimeters, the actual chessboard itself, so we split it into a puzzle piece.
Yeah, so in order to sort of save the materials, we decided to just cut the base into quarters, and
right.
we were able to sort of save a lot of material on packaging, for example.
So we're saving material, it's a low-cost material. What are you using, by the way, for this chess set?
We're using MDF, 3mm MDF.
MDF, so that's a kind of timber, like a recycled timber?
Correct, yeah, yeah.
Right, 3mm MDF, low cost. The sheet costs about
20 bucks.
About 20 rand, South African rands. I don't want to convert that to dollars, it'll be a couple of cents. So you've got 4 quarters, you're going to make up this chess set. I don't know, I mean, my generation, if I had to make a chess set, it'd probably take me days. You guys are doing it in about 35, 40 minutes. So we're really keen to see what it's going to look like.
We're quite fortunate to have obviously all the tools that we need. So we've got laser cutters, we've got all the software that we need to be able to use to make everything. And yeah, so we.
So you've got the IP and the design here in all of you people,
yeah.
And then you've got the software and the technology and all the hardware to make it.
Correct.
Great. We'll see you in a couple of minutes.
Nice one.
Thank you very much. All the best. Ladies and gentlemen, I'm going to move over to our second segment and invite my co-panelists to say a few words and share his thoughts with us. Kevin is, as I said earlier, the vice president, a senior leader of the business, the satellite business called Yahsat in Africa, and he's based in Cape Town, South Africa. So I'm going to get Kevin to maybe firstly tell you about what he does at Yahsat, and then I'm going to ask him to share a few thoughts on his experience on entrepreneurial ventures and how technology is being used by entrepreneurs in Africa for his many decades of experience on the continent. Kevin, welcome again. Thank you for joining us. I hand over to you, Kevin.
Thank you, Dr. Shaikh. Fascinating introduction to the session. And I know we only spoke for the first time yesterday. So to the bigger audience, I welcome you to the session. I've been traveling around Africa and working in Africa for well on 20 odd 30 years. So giving away my age a little bit. Therefore welcome to all my colleagues in Africa. And Yahsat being a UAE-based company, I guess those that have joined from the UAE, I have to welcome you as my brothers as well. Thank you very much for joining. Dr. Shaikh, following on your introduction and us meeting yesterday, you and I had not met, we'd not spoken before. the story you tell and the opening picture of the brain operation, before I jump into what we do in Africa, let me just tell you, I have first-hand experience and a very scary experience about a much lesser operation, but where the 3D printing and the technology you talk about that the guys are using now could have helped tremendously in the past.
Sure.
So the year was 1991. I was diagnosed with a brain. Forgive me giggling. I had too much brain. The brain was growing down the cranial of my skull, and it needed surgery within 6 weeks of it being diagnosed. Long story short, here I am, 20 odd years later, successful. But there were many similar people that did not have the same success as I had, and a very good surgeon. So I guess the technology of 3D printing, and as they're going along during the operation, would have yielded a lot more positive results than we'd had in the past. So that in mind, let me tell you, I'm still around after that surgery. I started the business in Africa for Yahsat, Yahsat being a satellite operator based out of the UAE. We owned by the Mubadala Group, and in Africa the business is called Yahsat as a broadband satellite operator. So broadband, we use it a bit loosely. We operate in 28 countries in Africa. Services are from consumer products all the way through the stack into enterprise, as well as backhaul technologies that we use. So the technology stack that we talk about in the fourth industrial revolution, almost all of it, no, I'd go so far as to say all those disruptive technologies, whether it be AI, blockchain, robotics, etc., they all require an element called connectivity. Now, whether that is terrestrial, fiber, VSAT, doesn't matter. I think the fourth industrial revolution requires technology, and that in the first world countries, I think we find it very easy. For us in Africa, the basics of infrastructure is a challenge at best. Whether that infrastructure is electricity, the basic human need of electricity, or connectivity as a terrestrial provider in terms of broadband. So, as I said, we started 12 years ago. We identified connectivity as an issue in Africa, and Yahsat launched a product called Yahsat. It's based on Ka band technology. And my first bit of relevant contribution to today is that that technology then was brought into Africa as a disruptor of technology, because we became the pioneers of Ka band in Africa. What it allowed us to do was have ubiquitous coverage across the continent on fiber-like speeds, and we can reach the most rural areas of the continent. So that in mind, who would have known that in 2020, with the launch of that technology, we try to be disruptive, not only in technology, but in the way people think and move around Africa. That in 2020, that technology would, along with the pandemic we all encountering, I think kind of spurs on the fourth industrial revolution and the technologies that are needed in Africa. Just in the last 4 months, the way we live, the way we work, I guess these are unprecedented times, has changed considerably. I have a house that wife works from home, I work from home, My daughter is studying from home. I guess we've all changed, but without us having the very simplistic or basic good infrastructure technology of an internet connection, this would all not be possible. Goodness only knows what we would have done as a global economy or even in our own personal lives if we didn't have connectivity. So I guess the pandemic, the times, the evolution of technology has ushered in the, I think what we're seeing as the new norm. It's a phrase that everybody uses, but reality is this is a new norm. Even this webinar we're on, we normally gather in a hall. We'd be talking to hundreds of people in all. Now we do it virtually. I want to take a step further by talking about the challenges that we have, and South Africa included. When we talk technology disruptors, the first world talks about, and please forgive me, I'm talking in the telecommunications world and connectivity. The telecommunications guys in the first world talk about bandwidth per user, and they talk about 100 megabits per second, and they talk about gigs usage a day. Direct to home television uses thousands of channels. They've got access to everything. And that to me is kind of first world problems, because they have so many options and so many opportunities that us down in the southern tip of Africa and the larger group of Africa, we still struggle with the very basics of infrastructure. And I'm going to take, Ahmed, if you don't mind, I'm just going to take a moment to explain the challenges we have. I know everybody knows the challenges, but if we don't have connectivity waxed properly, consistent, I think we're going to find that the technology and applications of 4IR will be found wanting simply because the very basics of our connectivity is not there. So we've come up with new technologies, fiber, terrestrial, wireless, VSAT. None of them are good. None of them are better than others. And I think as a group, we've got to embrace that they complement each other to provide the basis for our apps and technology and the evolution that we're talking about today. That's my introduction and my contribution to start the conversation. Thank you.
Kevin, thank you very much for that input. So I didn't realize that my opening story about the conjoined twins would have a certain resonance with you. And okay, so there's some evidence that you're showing the participants. Thank God you are speaking to us today and you're well. But I mean, it's touched me in how you're saying the technology that wasn't available then and you know, with its disadvantages, and to some extent yourself, but thank God you're well. But so many people could have benefited, you know, if we were in the 4IR sort of period a little earlier, I guess. And healthcare has benefited tremendously from this kind of technology. And I thought this was a lovely example. And it's interesting to hear your story. I pray for your good health. But thanks for your input, Kevin. I wanted to just ask quickly on one point you raised before we move on to the next segment of my slides. You talked about connectivity, and that's it's the oxygen in the tank, isn't it, Kevin? Because without it, we're not going to be able to, as a continent in Africa, benefit from all of the beautiful things that is happening with exponential technology. And oftentimes, you know, in 4IR, Kevin, in our business school, we often finish by saying no one should be left behind with 4IR. And so there's this big disconnect. In the old days, we used to call it the digital divide. You know, are we getting better African entrepreneurs, and there's a question here from somebody in Africa about entrepreneurship challenges for African entrepreneurs. Can you give us a sense of hope and maybe some line of sight from where you are at in your company and your work in Africa? Are we getting better? Are we close? Are we closing the gap for the 500 million young people, for example, in Africa who are budding entrepreneurs or potential entrepreneurs?
Undoubtedly. Undoubtedly we are. And some of us are, I want to say, Africa's under our skin. We can feel it, we live it, we breathe it every day. As I mentioned earlier, we operate in 28 countries. I've probably been around to more than 30 countries in Africa in the last, touching and feeling it. But entrepreneurship is born in Africa. I firmly believe that us in Africa, we know how to be entrepreneurs because it's inbred. I think it comes out of the need to be successful and the need to be successful in an environment which is classified as third world. So we almost have to pick ourselves up by our boots and just keep driving forward. However, personally, we can only do that if there are opportunities that present itself, or we have the vision to see it, or we have webinars like this and others. So what our organization has done in the 28 countries is we appoint a set of licensed, regulated service partners. We encourage distributors to be underneath them. And within that distributor and service partner chain, it's the encouragement of local entrepreneurship, whether it be installers, distributors, whether they do our Wi-Fi voucher, and we've got a Wi-Fi voucher that serves communities. So to me, I think that's what it is. It requires opportunities, but it requires companies like ours and others on the continent to make facilities available for these entrepreneurs.
Thanks, Kevin. I see a number of questions coming through on our Q&A that talks about infrastructure. So you touched on connectivity. You've given us a sense of hope. But as you suggest, entrepreneurs need to reach out and grasp the opportunities, use design thinking, and even in the midst of a pandemic, seek out opportunity. You know, one thing is to be resilient, to sort of go along and wait for the storm to be over. The other is to really, you know, actively seek out opportunities out there for entrepreneurship and enterprise development in this period. But we're grateful for people like you and the work that you do on the continent to sort of close the gap and, in a way, give us this hope that no one will be left behind in Africa on 4IR. I just want to quickly go through two questions, Kevin, and if you have any comments on this. The one question is about the African continent with young people and dynamic potential. What are the entrepreneurial priorities in innovation and research? For example, in healthcare, in agri-tech, and Industry 4.0. So that's one question. Kevin, just keep that in mind. The young people, we've got 1 billion people in Africa, 500 million of whom are under the age of 25. So we've got this big demographic dividend, as we call it, a youth bulge in Africa. And how can they take advantage of the opportunities? The second question is from somebody in South Africa, in Johannesburg, in fact, Ahmed Ismail, a close friend. How can 4IR be demystified in communities at grassroots and make it affordable? So this is a big issue. And Ahmed, it's an interesting question. I use the word demystified. I think we can do it. We've trained 2,000 people, many of whom have never touched a computer. We've trained them in the last year, and they're doing 3D design and 3D printing within a couple of days in a boot camp. So Ahmed, it's very possible. We run these boot camps very regularly, and we're happy to reach out to people like you and the great work that you're doing through your organization. But Kevin, keep the first one in mind about young people, and just before we close, we'll try and pick it up and we'll respond to it, right? Okay. So ladies and gentlemen, in the next segment of a few slides, I want to try and conclude what I started with, and we've got about 15 or 20 minutes left. So let me see if I can just get my slides up again and try and race through a few more thoughts on demystifying or attempting to demystify 4IR and give you, if possible, a few more examples of how this could impact business. So one of the things we're saying is that its relevance to 4IR is key to business, but there's going to be this need for acceleration in innovation and the velocity of disruption. So I'm using some engineering terminology here, right? The velocity of disruption. So entrepreneurs, businesses, some of you joining us this morning are sitting in large organizations, probably in corporates. There's probably never been a better time for professionals in large corporations to embrace innovation and entrepreneurship. I know that sounds a little counterintuitive, but some examples to show you how fast the technology is moving. So here's a little picture. I've got a military supercomputer in the 1960s or 70s, a military supercomputer that's got the same computing power as my son's PlayStation 4, right? So just try to imagine how quickly technology has moved. A kid using a PS4 has got the same computing capacity to a military supercomputer in the 1960s. So that just gives you an idea how quickly things are moving, and the kids, then the kind of computing power they have, only superpowers were able to have in their supercomputers. So here's another slide. I want to tell you quickly about a concept that we call dematerialization. It's a big word, dematerialization. Some of you who are about my age will recognize the top left picture. It's a telephone. I used to use that when I was a kid. The one next to it on the right is something my dad used to use, a typewriter. It's a lot of noise. Some of you may remember a Walkman, right? A clock, radio, camera, post box, a big calculator. All of these items, I'm reasonably certain many of you, if not all of you, don't use anymore, right? All of this is gone. But you have that plus a lot more in facilities and utility just on this gadget. Your disruption device, I call it sometimes at meetings. Your interruption device, right? Your mobile phone. This little gadget you put in your pocket and we all get attached to. There's now more mobile phones than human beings on earth, right? It's sort of replaced all of that stuff. It's all gone. That means that those industries have gone too. And this is why we call these items disruptive technologies. They do destroy industries and they create new industries. They destroy jobs and they create jobs, right? So job creation and destruction and industry creation and destruction is certainly an element with its positive and negative effects of 4IR. So this concept of dematerialization, and we are stuffing more utilities. You can literally not get lost anywhere on the planet today if you've got internet, mobile internet, and a smartphone with you. Very interesting in how technology is moving. But Kevin and ladies and gentlemen on the call, I want to share with you that innovation doesn't have to be high tech. It starts with the thought process. So here's a company many of you may know. They deliver pizzas. And if you deliver pizzas in a busy city like Jakarta, Indonesia, or in Cairo in Egypt, in Johannesburg in South Africa, you know that in traffic, you're probably going to deliver cold pizzas. So what this company decided to do is put an oven on the motorbike that delivers the pizza, right? So here's the innovation and design thinking at the most basic level. How do you take the customer and put that person at the center of the solution that you've got in mind? So here's an oven on a bike in a busy city. You make a raw pizza, you put it into the bike, it bakes as you are moving. And when you get to the customer, hopefully you're delivering hot pizza. But it starts with this kind of innovative thinking at the most basic level. I'm just going to get my idle timer out of my screen and show you a little video. I'm sorry, I must apologize in advance if the sound you don't hear, but I think you'll appreciate the visuals on the screen. ladies and gentlemen, this is a short video about a company started in the Middle East called Red Tomato Pizza. And they're using some very basic technology, as you would have seen in the video. They're using Bluetooth-enabled technology in a fridge magnet. So if you want to order a pizza, there's no need to dial up somebody and then try to explain the kind of pizza you want. This particular company has created a fridge magnet. Yeah, those little pretty things you buy when you travel overseas. They've put in Bluetooth technology connected to a pizza shop. You just press the button for the particular pizza. It gets sent via Bluetooth to the pizza shop. They make up the pizza and they deliver to you in a couple of minutes. Now, I know all of you have a smartphone, probably. All of you have Bluetooth on your smartphone. You may use it to share files, download music, connect to AirPods. But here's a business idea using Bluetooth, which every one of us has. So again, like the pizza oven on a motorbike, we don't have to create enterprises with billions of rands of seed capital. We could start with the right idea, good design thinking, good sense making of what is needed in our communities at a grassroots level, solve a social problem, use accessible technology and create an enterprise. So I thought that's an interesting way, but I'm going to conclude with a couple of slides on how businesses are being transformed. And for the entrepreneurs on this call, I know you know this already. For those of you thinking of an entrepreneurial venture, I think it's important to keep in mind that the traditional way of doing a business, you get raw material, comes into a factory, you manufacture something, a physical product, then you got a distribution and a supply chain, and you find customers and you go and deliver it. That single traditional kind of pipeline's gone. It's the old world of business, not just pre-COVID, but it's the old way. This new way of creating a platform business, bi-directional, multiple value chain ecosystems, etc., where customers, producers, material suppliers are all connected on one sort of platform, is where it's going. Of course, these are really old examples now of platform businesses, Uber, Airbnb, Facebook, and you may know many others. These are businesses with no legacy infrastructure, right? They're creating a facilitation of exchange, if you like, between buyers and sellers, and they're doing it on demand, right? So Uber doesn't have to buy 1,000 taxi cabs. They're going to connect a driver who's in the area with a passenger who needs a ride. So it's the on-demand economy, lower costs, seemingly limitless scale, right? But here's a pic of a large automotive manufacturing plant in the US, probably in the 1940s. I like classic cars, so I see quite a few 1940s vehicles there. In fact, thousands of them. Now look at all the money stuck in the inventory, that large plant, etc. This is again the old world of business. But this move that we have, ladies and gentlemen, to what I call a non-asset intensive platform business. Technology is the supercharger behind it. It's transforming the need for physical infrastructure, inventory, assets, and it's creating value through the capture, analysis, and exchange of vast amounts of data. Every time you are online on your mobile phone or on your computer, you leave behind a digital footprint. And what companies in the platform economy do is they capture that footprint. They know what your needs are, what you search, where you visit, where you travel, how often you travel, etc. And they manipulate this data. And I mean that in a positive way to create really large businesses. And for me, perhaps the pinnacle of this kind of platform business is one that you know very well, and I'm sure many of you have used. It's called Amazon.com. So Amazon's got in excess of 300 million active users, and they leverage what Amazon calls prime choice efficiency, and they have seemingly limitless scale. Amazon's able to move into a market literally overnight, right? So Amazon's a great example of a very large platform business. Colleagues and ladies and gentlemen, let me conclude, and then we're going to go over to our team who's quietly working away at the back, and we'll see how far they've gone with the product they promised to deliver within an hour. So we started, ladies and gentlemen, at Regent Business School, an enterprise development hub. It's called Red Hub, which means Regent Enterprise Development Red Hub, right? And it's a business and support enterprise development facility that promotes entrepreneurship. We'd like to think it's primarily technology focused, but not exclusively. And we want to support new venture creation, especially with people in Africa, young people in Africa. I know quite a few comments and questions have come through from some of our partner institutions. We belong to a Pan-African network of private universities called Honoris United Universities. You'll see it in our logo, and I see some of my colleagues from Tunisia have posted some comments, Nigeria and Morocco. Thank you for joining. I owe you one. And many young people in that part of Africa, Central and my part of Africa, the Southern tip, are really looking to do something on their own, especially in the post-COVID period. And we want to be able to, through the Red Hub at Regent Business School, support these would-be or these initial sort of pre-startup or startup entrepreneurs, right? And just to give you a sense of what we're trying to do as I conclude my presentation, ladies and gentlemen, and I'll move over to Kevin for a minute, and then we'll look at our finished product, hopefully, or wherever they are at. We want to respond now to the disruption in the labor market, the job losses. Unfortunately, my country, South Africa, as many South Africans would know, we had a pre-COVID unemployment rate that was just under 30%. And post-COVID, God forbid, analysts are predicting up to 50% unemployment. That's an absolute catastrophe. And the only way we could get ourselves out of this kind of situation is to support enterprise. So if you have an idea, you're on this call, we really would like to hear from you if you've got a business idea. If you think our business hub is able to incubate your idea, are you at the startup phase, a pre-startup phase? You need some basic technology. We really would like to hear from you. But also, we've got these maker spaces in all the major cities of South Africa. We call them the iLead labs. It's got all the technology, 3D printing. It's got people who are engineers, technologists, laser cutting machines, and a whole host of technology that you could make up a product, prototype, test it, go to market, come back, do an iteration until you get it right. So we've got the skills and the people and the technology to support this kind of thing. And the last item I want to just mention is a big headline these days in education, is the concept of employability. So if formal employment is in serious difficulty, if there's serious disruption in labor markets, traditional employment queues are too long and unemployment queues are even longer, perhaps it's time for us to redefine what employability means for universities like mine and higher education institutions, especially in emerging markets like those in Africa. And I think enterprise development is the panacea, and I'm sure all of you would agree. And so there's a whole range of services that we offer in our Red Hub, and I hope you get in touch with us and our colleagues and see if there's a way we could partner with you or collaborate with you, as we're doing with Vuyani this morning, one of our students here. And we could do it depending on wherever you are in your business, at the bootstrapping stage, as we call it, at a seed stage, at a growth stage. We're really keen to hear from you and get involved. Let me conclude with a couple of thoughts. There's just 2 slides, and I'll take a question and move to Kevin. I want to talk about this thing that I really feel strongly about. As a private institution, higher education, you know, we've learned in economics that there are factors of production. You need things to make a business. You need land, labor, capital, raw materials. In the context of 4IR, ladies and gentlemen, you probably know this. Let me reinforce it. Talent, skills is a critical factor of production. And I want to give you an example, but time doesn't allow me. That's a really important. So join us for a short course. Join another makerspace if you need to in your area. But talent is the critical factor of production in the context of 4IR. Be agile, rapid innovation. If you work in a large corporate, then this is especially relevant for you. Aggressive workforce retraining and creating an agile culture. So before I go over to see the final product, I hope there's a final product because that's what they promised, and I'm not going to be let down by them. Let me just move over to Kevin very quickly. If he's got a comment or two. Kevin, we've got a few minutes before we close our webinar. I was wondering if you had given thought to either a previous question asked about opportunities for young entrepreneurs, or just a thought at the top of your head before we close, Kevin.
I have. In fact, one of my closing thoughts is we really should follow this up with the next step of this conversation and perhaps be a little bit more practical in what the next steps are towards entrepreneurship, what the opportunities are, and the force that is sitting behind this webinar all around Africa and the globe, what opportunities we can help each other to achieve the blunt force of unemployment that is happening because of the pandemic and others. That's what I'd like to suggest, and I'm obviously will avail myself to be, if invited, I'd love to participate. But there are two things I want to just take 2 minutes for. The entrepreneurship bit and the demystifying. I guess the easy bit to say is the opportunities are out there. I look at, there was a couple of comments on or questions about communities, connectivity, and all related to that central topic. We as Yahsat have got an entrepreneurship program for installation teams. We do the training. We, as long as they have access to a vehicle, there's training that happens and they can become VSAT installers. South Africa and Africa. We've launched a Wi-Fi community-based platform that is busy rolling out. We probably have couple of hundred sites at the moment. Those we will take out. The entrepreneur opportunities in that is identifying regions, going into the spaza shops, going into your community centers, creating Wi-Fi hubs so that people don't need to travel miles to go and get internet connectivity or to the libraries. And if we create these pockets of connectivity hubs around our populous, dense areas, I think we start meshing a community that becomes connected.
Absolutely.
And once they are connected, we can have all these 4IR opportunities coming to the fore. I've got no doubt that the opportunities lies in the people of this country and this continent.
Thanks.
I unfortunately also need to get onto another call, so I'll stay on for another few minutes. And
we'll be done in a minute or two.
So I just want to show you something before. Do you remember this? I've seen all your technologies that...
I sort of, yeah, sort of.
It's a Nokia 6200.
Right.
And it's a phone I still use.
Right.
When I travel around Africa, because there are some areas that don't have 3G or 4G or anything else. Right. So why walk around with this when so I still go back into the dark days and use this. I'd like to thank Regis, Ahmed, you and your team. I've enjoyed it, and I'm sure we'll stay in touch. I'll be around to support you whenever.
I just want to sort of pick you on the connectivity issue and the communities. You know, Kevin, we're putting a mobile lab, you know, a lab like this with all of the stuff, the technology, 3D printers, etc., where we can teach a rural community in my province, KwaZulu-Natal, north of KwaZulu-Natal. We're putting a mobile lab in the 2020-2021 year, where we get people, you know, kids from a rural school who are able to actually do 3D design, 3D printing. We'll teach them some basic electronics. And I know there was an earlier question about it being at a grassroots level. Teach them how to use a Raspberry program, a Raspberry Pi, an Arduino, you know, some basic electronics, a little bit of introduction to robotics and coding, etc. We really can demystify. And so with your partnership, you know, building these Wi-Fi hubs, we're very keen to chat. But Kevin, thanks. I hope you can stay for another 60 seconds. I'm just going to move over to our team. They seem to have stuff. So let's just see what they have, right? If they promised and they're delivering on their promise on rapid prototyping. So Viret, back to you and your team. You've got something in your hand. Tell me.
Absolutely. As promised, me and my team, we delivered.
Right.
Yes.
Well done.
Yeah. With me, I have my chess set for 2020. Here's our shield, and this is also to say to the people at home that keep on wearing your mask and protect yourself against the virus.
Excellent.
Yes. Here is our board.
Actually separates the two.
So what I see here are all the chess beads. I can recognize the shapes. They're sort of 2D kind of, but I mean it's a chess set, right? It's put into a lovely container.
What nice is obviously we've done two different types of bases as well, so that it kind of stands nicely. And
Oh, right.
differentiated between the two.
Interesting. I wonder if the camera could just sort of pan in there and get a closer view. This is our board.
This is our board.
Alana, those are the puzzle pieces you promised you're going to make them in 4 quarters.
Yeah.
Excellent. It's got the shield there. I see again the protection against the virus. The box is bright. Let me just knock it so it's real. Yeah. Okay. Or did you 3D print something?
Yes.
So just slide it this way, Brianni, so we can have a look.
3D printed this. It's a complimentary gift that we are making. Also, once you get to serve this, we can give you.
Oh,
this.
I thought it was for me. You mean you're going to put it into the chess set box, and so whoever gets this box is going to get a 3D printed key. What do you do with this key?
This key, because of the times you are in, you can use it to knock on open a door or to
Oh,
pin
I see,
your-
to avoid
your
all
pin.
the touching. So you
Yes.
press a lift button or you pull a door handle so you don't have to get your hands onto those surfaces.
Absolutely. When you go to an ATM, you can press the ATM using this.
I'm sure there are going to be lots of orders after this webinar, one from me since you didn't give me this one. But I see, colleagues, ladies and gentlemen, you've got your software here. What program did you design this
So
on?
we actually used Inkscape to get our chess pieces. We started off because we had a limited time. We couldn't really reinvent each chess piece, so we thought we'd go and find some general open
So
source.
you used existing images.
And then we traced that using a piece of software called Inkscape, which is freely available for everyone to use and to download from the internet. And then we took it across into SketchUp to make our actual pieces and our joins. So let me just quickly zoom in here so we can see what we're doing. So we just made some of the different joins that we obviously showed you there. And then we kind of made our chess board. And we made our puzzle inside there. And then from there, we took it into our RDWorks software, which is the software that talks to the laser cutter. And as you can see, that's a 60 by 90 centimeter laser cutting print bed. And we've used half of that board. So as we mentioned earlier, one full board of 60 by 90 centimeters works out to about 20 Rand. So you can see we've used half. So we basically got a chess set that cost about 10 Rand to produce.
10 Rand, 10 South African
10 South
Rand.
African
Like
Rand
1,
to
2,
produce.
3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10.
Correct.
10
Correct.
Rands. And that could be a gift, it could be sold.
I think it should go into all schools. Schools should be playing chess.
Absolutely. So that's the value chain of activities, ladies and gentlemen. You saw the scribbles, okay, no, they're not scribbles, they're designs by Sizwe, Alana, Vuyani, Yusuf, and Richard. You saw them go over, I don't know if the camera is able to get our laser cutter, which is a machine lying in the corner of our lab there. And that laser cutter is able to take the design and is able to get a final product. And all of this is done in literally under 60 minutes. And so this is where the chessboard is made up. It's rapid prototyping technology. You got an idea, you got a gift box you want to make, and you're not sure if it's going to work. You don't have to sort of just have it in your head. You can make it up and feel in touch and iterate on the design, refine it, and then take it to market. And here's a 3D printer.
I actually finished another one of these, so there we go. There's a gift for you.
Ah, so there is something for me, right? So that's my key. That's a basic 3D printer. I know, again, there was a question about affordability, access to technology. Richard, a 3D printer like this would cost roughly
About 9,000 Rand.
9,000 Rands, maybe just under 10,000 Rands.
What's quite nice about this particular machine is obviously most of it's 3D printed. It's all the black parts that you see, this orange part that you see, the holder over there, all of these kind of parts that you can see that are black have actually been 3D printed.
So basically, if you've got one printer, you can sort of make another printer,
if you've got
right?
two, you can print spare parts in case something goes
Yeah,
wrong.
interesting. Thanks, you guys delivered, well done. So let me
Thank
just
you, guys.
thank our guests and we'll close. So that's our 3D printer. So let me sign out in front of our laser cutter at the lab. Ladies and gentlemen, thank you very much for joining. We did our best to stick to time. It's really a discussion on how technology can be used for entrepreneurship. And here we're showing rapid prototyping technology. Take an idea, sketch it out on a board, on the back of a box, put it up into a basic software like SketchUp, get into our labs, use the technology, have a prototype, take it to market, test it, and you could have a product going. And there are lots of ideas I'm sure you have. For those of you who are thinking about it, we really would like to hear from you. You can get in touch with Regent Business School through our website, their email address is there, or the Enterprise Development Hub. Remember, this is the second of our monthly webinars. There's one every month. So next month, obviously, is going to be on women's entrepreneurship, and we'll take it up to December. Thanks a million for joining us, all of you across Africa, from the US, UK, and other parts of the world, the Middle East. This is Ahmed Shaikh. I want to thank Kevin again. Thank you, Kevin. Thanks a million for joining. All the best to you. We really want to talk to you about a partnership and some collaborative ventures on those Wi-Fi community hubs. That's an interesting idea. And ladies and gentlemen, really would like to hear from you. Thank you for joining us. All the best. Stay safe. Remember the mask. Wash your hands regularly and follow the rest of the protocol. And God willing, we'll all be good and safe. Thank you very much and take care and bye-bye.